At 2:03 in the afternoon, the sky stopped moving. Every cloud in every direction, from horizon to horizon, froze in place and hardened into something that caught the sunlight like a mirror, scattering it into thousands of fractured rainbows across the ground below. I was walking home from my part-time job, looking down at my phone, when the shadows around me suddenly shattered into 100 overlapping shapes, and when I looked up, the entire sky above the city had turned into a vast, cracked ceiling of transparent, glittering glass, hanging motionless where drifting white clouds had been just seconds before. Somewhere nearby, a bird slammed into what used to be open air and dropped straight to the pavement. The sky wasn't sky anymore. It was a lid. My name is Haru, and until 7 days ago, I was an unremarkable 19-year-old. The kind of person who blended into every classroom photo without anyone quite remembering my name afterward. Now, the entire visible sky above a 200-mile radius has hardened into a solid, glass-like dome, and for reasons nobody can explain, I'm the only person who was standing directly beneath the exact center of it when it happened. When I finally looked down at my own shadow that day, I noticed something that made my chest go cold. Every other shadow on the street had scattered into fractured, glass-like fragments the moment the transformation occurred. Mine hadn't. Mine stayed whole, sharp, and normal, as if the sky above me alone hadn't fully finished changing. The first 24 hours were pure global panic. News drones and helicopters that attempted to fly into the affected airspace simply couldn't. Pilots reported their instruments reading the sky above a certain altitude as a solid structure, dense enough to register on radar as an actual object rather than open atmosphere. Satellite footage, released within hours, showed something no one had words for. From space, the transformed region of sky looked like a single enormous pane of cracked glass laid directly over the curve of the Earth, sunlight refracting through it in long, colorful streaks visible from orbit. Meteorologists went on every network, stammering through explanations that all ended the same way. Clouds are water vapor, and water vapor doesn't spontaneously convert into a rigid, light-refracting solid without violating essentially every law of atmospheric physics currently understood. I didn't go straight home once I realized how bad it actually was. I stood in the street for almost 20 minutes, staring up at that impossible, glittering ceiling, watching light bend and scatter in patterns that shifted every time a breeze moved somewhere far below the frozen layer. It was only when a stranger nearby started filming the sky, then slowly turned the camera down toward me, then back up toward the exact point in the glass directly above my head, that I understood something crucial. There was a single, dark, perfectly circular fracture directly overhead, unmoving, centered precisely above the spot where I was standing, as if the entire sky had cracked around one single point, and I happened to be standing beneath it. By the second morning, that quiet, private terror ended completely. A convoy of military vehicles rolled onto my street just after sunrise, and armed personnel in full protective gear moved through the neighborhood with a methodical, practiced calm that somehow felt worse than chaos would have. They didn't search house to house. They came directly to mine, knocked exactly once, and informed me, without any real explanation, that I needed to come with them immediately. I remember asking why, and the officer in charge simply pointed upward, toward that same dark fracture point in the glass sky, still hanging directly above my exact location no matter how far the convoy eventually drove me from my original street. I was taken to a research facility built into a repurposed aircraft hangar on the outskirts of the city, its ceiling reinforced with layers of blast-resistant paneling that all pointed toward the same unsettling conclusion. Whatever they were preparing for, it was coming from above. There, in a converted hangar bay filled with humming servers and rows of atmospheric sensors, I met Dr. Amara Cade, the woman who introduced herself as the lead investigator for what officials were internally calling the glass sky anomaly. When I demanded to know why I'd been taken, she didn't offer comfort. She offered a live satellite feed instead, one showing the fracture point above my original location, still perfectly centered, still completely unmoving, even though I was now miles away from where I'd originally been standing. That fracture hasn't shifted an inch since the moment of transformation, she said, her voice carefully measured. Which would make sense, if it were tracking a fixed location on the ground. Except it isn't tracking a location, Haru, it's tracking you. She pulled the display closer, showing a secondary map layered on top of the first. My exact movement over the past 2 days, traced in a thin red line, moving from my street, to my apartment, to the vehicle that had brought me here. Overlaid perfectly on top of it, matching every turn and every stop with impossible precision, was the shifting position of that same dark fracture point in the sky above, recalculating itself in real time to remain permanently centered directly above wherever I happened to be. You're not observing this anomaly, Dr. Cade said quietly. You're the fixed point it's organizing itself around. Something up there is using you as an anchor, and we don't yet understand what it's anchoring itself in preparation for. That sentence settled into my chest and didn't leave. I wasn't a bystander caught beneath a freak atmospheric event. Whatever had turned the sky to glass had done so specifically in relation to me, and it hadn't finished whatever process it had started. Over the next 3 days, researchers ran continuous atmospheric scans, keeping me in an underground section of the facility, several floors beneath any direct view of the sky, as if simply removing me from beneath the fracture might interrupt whatever connection had formed. It didn't. Sensors placed above the underground chamber still registered a faint, localized softening in the reinforced ceiling directly above wherever I was seated, faint hairline cracks spreading briefly across solid concrete before fading, always in perfect alignment with my exact position in the building. On the 5th day, Dr. Cade brought me up to the hangar's highest observation platform, close enough to look directly up at the underside of the transformed sky for the first time since I'd arrived. The fracture point, still centered precisely above me, had grown noticeably larger, wide enough now that I could see straight through it into something dark and impossibly deep, a black gap in the glass ceiling that shouldn't have led anywhere but open atmosphere, and yet clearly led somewhere else entirely. "We've been tracking radio interference bleeding through that specific fracture for the last 6 hours, she said, her hand trembling slightly as she adjusted a nearby monitor. "It's not solar interference. It's not any known transmission source. Based on the pattern, we believe something is broadcasting from directly on the other side of that gap. And it's been broadcasting your name." The words landed like a physical weight. Before I could respond, the fracture directly above us widened further with a sharp, splintering groan that echoed off every metal surface in the hangar, sending researchers scrambling toward emergency stations along the walls. Through the growing gap, a soft, pulsing light became visible. Faint at first, then unmistakably rhythmic, matching, beat for beat, the exact pace of my own racing heartbeat. "It's not trying to destroy anything," Dr. Cade said, her earlier composure finally slipping. "Based on everything we've measured, we believe the sky didn't turn to glass to trap something in. We believe it turned to glass to keep something out, and whatever's on the other side has just found the one weak point in that barrier, you." Alarms began cutting through the hangar from every direction, and through the widening fracture directly overhead, I could see something shifting in the dark space beyond the glass, vast and patient, drawing closer with every passing second, as though it had been waiting on the other side of the sky for exactly this moment, and exactly this doorway, to finally open. Thank you for watching Anime Echo Tales. If you want to find out what's waiting on the other side of that fracture, and why the sky chose Haru as its anchor point, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Is it trying to protect us, or has it just found a way in? The next chapter of this story is coming very soon. Stay grounded, because up there, something is already looking down.